He who studies medicine without books sails an uncharted sea, but he who studies medicine without patience does not go to sea at all. This quote from Sir William Osler captures medicine's dual nature. It requires both theoretical knowledge and practical application, a balance first recognized not in modern labs, but in ancient healing traditions. Osler's wisdom echoes Ibn Sina's approach from 1,000 years earlier when this Persian physician insisted medical students both study texts and observe patients. Today's video reveals how this tension between book learning and clinical practice has driven medical progress across civilizations, creating unexpected bridges between cultures that politically couldn't stand each other. Have you ever wondered how a Persian physician's book became Europe's medical Bible for 500 years? The story of Ibn Sina's Canon of Medicine is one that completely challenges our understanding of East-West relations throughout history. In the bustling intellectual centers of 11th century Central Asia, a brilliant physician named Ibn Sina, later known as Avicenna in Europe, was hard at work compiling what would become the most influential medical text of the medieval world. In 1025, while Europe was still emerging from its darkest period, Ibn Sina created his masterpiece, the Canon of Medicine, drawing from diverse sources across multiple civilizations. What's truly remarkable is the timing of this knowledge transfer. Picture this. Christian knights and Muslim warriors were literally killing each other during the Crusades. Religious leaders on both sides condemned the infidels. Political rulers enforced strict boundaries. By all logic, a Muslim scholar's medical encyclopedia should never have reached Christian Europe, let alone become its medical foundation. Yet somehow, this medical knowledge found paths through seemingly impenetrable barriers. The journey began in Toledo, Spain, a unique cultural intersection where something extraordinary was happening. Jewish, Christian, and Muslim scholars worked side by side in translation centers, carefully converting Arabic texts into languages Europeans could understand. This collaborative effort across religious lines happened while religious warfare raged elsewhere. The Canon's physical journey is equally fascinating. Each copy required months of painstaking handwritten reproduction. When Gerard of Cremona translated it into Latin around 1170, he transformed this Persian text into something European scholars could finally access directly. Like a medical version of a viral message, the canon spread to emerging universities across the continent. By the 1200s, something unimaginable had occurred. This foreign text became mandatory reading at prestigious European universities like Montpellier, Bologna, Paris, and Oxford. Imagine being a medieval European medical student. Your core textbook was written by a Muslim from a civilization your religious leaders considered enemies. What made Ibn Sina's work so revolutionary wasn't just its content, but its approach. European medicine at the time lacked systematic organization. The canon introduced a logical framework that combined theoretical knowledge with practical observation, a methodology that would eventually become the foundation of scientific medicine. It organized diseases by body parts, described their causes, symptoms, and treatments with unprecedented clarity. For half a millennium, no European physician could earn their credentials without intimate knowledge of this Persian text. Even as late as 1650, well into the Renaissance period, Ibn Sina's teachings remained central to European medical education. Think medical innovation is mostly a modern phenomenon? The truth might surprise you. That surgeon carefully stitching wounds in today's hospital is using techniques that were first documented when pharaohs still ruled Egypt. We're not just building on ancient knowledge, we're often rediscovering what our ancestors already knew. When American surgeon Edwin Smith purchased a mysterious papyrus in Egypt in 1862, he couldn't have imagined its significance. It wasn't until 1930 that scholars finally translated it and made a stunning discovery. This 3,600-year-old document wasn't just any text. It was a sophisticated surgical manual containing 48 case histories of injuries and their treatments, written in hieratic script. What's truly remarkable about the Edwin Smith papyrus is how it approaches medicine. Each case follows a systematic structure: examination, diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment. Exactly the same steps doctors follow in hospitals today. The papyrus details treatments for everything from head injuries to spinal trauma, with surprising sophistication. In one case, it describes a patient with a serious head injury, showing symptoms like bleeding from the nose and mouth. The ancient physicians recognized this as a grave condition and correctly noted it was untreatable with their available methods. The papyrus even contains specific medicinal formulas. One prescription for hemorrhoids combined oil, resin, and acacia leaves, ingredients that modern pharmacology can recognize as having legitimate therapeutic properties. But Egypt wasn't the only ancient civilization with advanced medical knowledge. In India, around 600 BCE, a surgeon named Sushruta was performing complex procedures including rhinoplasty or nose reconstruction. His text, the Sushruta Samhita, describes surgical instruments like the shalaka, probe, that closely resemble tools found in operating rooms today. Modern surgeons would immediately recognize many of Sushruta's instruments and techniques. They've remained fundamentally unchanged for more than 2 millennia. Archaeological evidence suggests ancient surgical procedures were more advanced than we once believed. Take trepanation, the practice of drilling holes into the skull. Studies of ancient remains show that many patients survived this procedure, indicating these early surgeons possessed remarkable anatomical knowledge and technical skill. What's particularly fascinating is how these ancient healing practices are now being validated by modern science. Acupuncture, long dismissed by Western medicine, has recently been the subject of clinical studies showing its effectiveness in managing chronic pain. A 2020 meta-analysis confirmed significant pain relief in patients receiving acupuncture treatment. Similarly, ancient herbal remedies that were used for centuries are now being analyzed by pharmacologists who can identify the active compounds that make these plants effective. Plants that were once prescribed for various ailments are proving to have legitimate medicinal properties when subjected to rigorous scientific testing. The ancient medical knowledge we're rediscovering today survived by the thinnest of threads. While Europe descended into the Dark Ages after Rome's fall in 476 CE, an extraordinary network of scholars across the Middle East wasn't just preserving medical texts, they were revolutionizing them. Picture this. As European medical knowledge regressed to basic folk remedies and faith healing, a remarkable institution called the House of Wisdom was flourishing in Baghdad. This wasn't just a library, it was the ancient world's greatest think tank. Scholars there weren't content with simply translating Greek, Roman, Persian, and Indian medical texts. They created something entirely new, a synthesis of global medical knowledge that far surpassed anything that came before. These scholars didn't view knowledge through the narrow lens of cultural or religious identity. Medical wisdom was medical wisdom, regardless of its source. They translated, debated, and enhanced these texts, creating a medical tradition that would eventually reshape European understanding of the human body. One of these scholars, Ibn al-Nafis, made a discovery in the 13th century that would change medicine forever. While European physicians were still clinging to ancient Greek theories about how blood moved through the body, al-Nafis correctly described pulmonary circulation, how blood flows from the heart to the lungs and back. The truly astonishing part? Europeans wouldn't discover this same process until 3 centuries later, never knowing that the knowledge had existed all along in Arabic texts. But the preservation of medical knowledge wasn't limited to the Islamic world. In Europe's monasteries, monks quietly copied and maintained ancient medical texts, becoming the primary healthcare providers for their communities. They blended spiritual care with the practical medicine described in the texts they preserved, keeping a flicker of medical knowledge alive during Europe's darkest period. Women healers played an equally crucial role, though history has often erased their contributions. While lacking formal education, these women maintained practical healing traditions, passing down knowledge through generations. Their expertise in herbal remedies and women's health was unmatched. One remarkable example is Trotta of Salerno, whose text, the Trotula, became foundational to gynecology. Yet many women with similar knowledge were branded as witches, forcing this medical tradition underground. During the Renaissance, as Europeans began rediscovering their ancient past, brave anatomists started challenging medical dogma through direct observation. Leonardo da Vinci secretly conducted human dissections, creating anatomical drawings of such accuracy and detail that they wouldn't be surpassed for centuries. Yet he kept these medical breakthroughs hidden, fearing persecution from religious authorities who condemned such practices. As we look back at the remarkable journey of medical knowledge through time, it's clear that healing transcends the artificial boundaries we've created. Medicine has never been the property of a single culture or era. It belongs to all of humanity. This shared heritage continues today as medical authorities emphasize that addressing modern global health challenges requires genuine cross-cultural cooperation. Think about it. Pandemics, chronic diseases, and emerging health threats don't respect national borders. The solutions shouldn't either. That's why we're now seeing significant efforts to integrate traditional healing knowledge from various cultures into modern practice. Scientists are validating ancient herbal remedies and alternative therapies through rigorous research, creating healthcare systems that blend the best of all traditions. Just as knowledge flowed along ancient trade routes connecting distant civilizations, today's medical breakthroughs depend on our ability to learn from each other. Perhaps that's the most powerful medicine of all, our capacity to share wisdom across cultures and through time.